it makes a huge difference for us when we're with them, but it'll make a huge difference for them as well. It makes your quality of life better when you can work out your relationships and have a nice time together and kind of give each other the room to be who you are, right? Yeah.
Crew, you've watched Kody Brown break down before. You've watched the shaking hands, the flushed face, the half-whispered declarations of love, loyalty, and betrayal. But what you witnessed last season wasn't love. It was something more sinister, something manipulative, and tonight we're stripping away the layers of that meltdown. The one moment that made even Robyn fearful, and revealing to you the reality behind it all. Because here is what nobody told you, team. Kody's meltdown wasn't about losing a wife. It was losing control, freeze frame. His hands are over his face, Robyn's eyes scanning the ground, and the camera's pause a beat too long. You remember it, don't you? The emotional breakdown everyone assumed was heartbreak. The network lost the feed there. But what happened after the cameras went dark is what tells the real story, and we've got it. Insiders close to production say what Kody said next was so raw, so revealing, it had to be edited out. He didn't cry about love. He shouted about obedience, about no one respecting his position, about women thinking they could run a family. Crew, that's not heartbreak. That is domination, breaking under its own pressure. Before we dive further, if you've been watching this family disintegrate brick by brick, and you think that manipulation isn't love, pound that like button until it bluer than the sky. Let's let the algorithm know that our crew can see right through the charade. We're not just viewers. We're witnesses to a truth that's been hidden under decades of spiritual love and PR smiles. Because when control is dressed up as compassion, it doesn't just destroy relationships. It destroys souls. It started on a quiet afternoon in Flagstaff. The cameras weren't rolling yet, but the tension was electric. Christine had only just submitted fresh documents, the sort that would open up the family's finances at last. And for the very first time, the empire Kody had constructed on loyalty, vows, and oneness began to crumble. Producers claim he arrived on set late, pacing, muttering to himself. Someone said, "Kody, are you all right?" He snapped, "They don't get it. They don't understand me." He sat, pressed palms against temples, and breathed softly. If only they were listening, if only they obeyed, this would not have occurred. That crew was the first indicator this collapse wasn't emotional loss. It was structural failure. The downfall of a man who believed compliance was love. Now I want you to listen carefully, because this is when things get serious. When you take away the weeping and the shaking voice, what is left? Control, expectation, fear of being obsolete, and that is what all of this has been leading up to. Not a love tragedy, but a power meltdown. When Christine walked out, she didn't just take her belongings. She took his power. She believed the fantasy that his words still carried weight. And in that instant, the collapse you witnessed wasn't grief. It was fear, crew. You are listening to this. He taught for years about family order. He professed to love them equally, but insisted upon obedience differently. He wielded love as blackmail. He wielded commitment as a chain, and when those chains broke, he shattered. Not because he was forsaken, the confession that changed everything, crew. What you're about to hear wasn't supposed to leave the cutting room. It happened after the breakdown when the lights dimmed, the microphones were supposedly off, and Robyn thought no one was listening. But someone was, and what Kody said in that moment, what he whispered through clenched teeth, revealed the real reason he fell apart. Not because his heart was shattered, but because his grip was slipping. Sources close to the production indicate Kody's voice was shaking. Not with grief, but outrage. He turned to Robyn, pacing and retracing his steps, and declared, "They don't realize what it means to command. They don't realize what happens when a man loses respect in his own home." Robyn didn't reply, she simply stared, Kody continued. Christine left me for herself, he spat. She left to show her that she could. That is the disrespect. That is rebellion. Crew, listen to that word. Rebellion. That is not the vocabulary of love. That is the vocabulary of control, of a man who thought obedience was love. When Christine left, she was not disobeying. She was freeing herself, but to Kody freedom resembled betrayal. He sat down, still shaking, his fists wrapped around the edge of the couch. Robyn reached out to calm him down, but he snapped again. Don't touch me. You still have loyalty. Don't throw it away like they did. There it was, loyalty, not love, not compassion. Loyalty, the kind you demand, not earn. And that is when Robyn whispered something that chilled the room. Maybe they didn't leave you, Kody. Perhaps they left what you turned into. He glared at her, eyes wide, voice cutting. What I turned into what they needed. I kept this family afloat when everyone else was faltering. Crew, that is when producers exchanged covert glances. Because for the first time, the mask had slipped off. The meltdown wasn't about heartbreak, it was about power seeping from his grasp, one source described. It was like seeing a king discover his crown wasn't needed anymore. And the scariest part of it all, after a couple of seconds of silence, Kody began to laugh. Not happily, but the laugh that conceals terror. They think they can make do without me, he declared. They'll come crawling back when it all collapses. That is not love. Crew, that is possession masquerading as concern. That's manipulation dressed as heartbreak. And for Robyn, the one wife still standing beside him, it was the first time she saw the truth. She wasn't his partner, she was his last soldier. Crew. If you're watching right now and you've ever seen someone weaponize love to maintain power, drop a in the comments, because what we're uncovering here isn't just a marriage falling apart. It is a system founded on control, and a man standing by as it collapses. Now, before we continue, consider this. Kody's worst fear wasn't loneliness. It was irrelevance. Each tear, each yell, each angry outburst was over control, not connection. Because in his head, if he wasn't being complied with, he wasn't being loved. And when Christine broke that cycle, he lost more than a wife. He lost his source of power. Crew, can you see it now? The collapse wasn't a collapse of emotion. It was the revealing of a truth he could no longer conceal. And in the second half, we go even further. Because Robyn's confidential diary entry during that week, the one that was hidden by production, tells us precisely what she witnessed in those instants. And I assure you, everything shifts. Robyn's secret diary. Crew, this is where the story turns from speculation to proof. Everything we've heard so far, the whispers, the outbursts, the control, it all comes together here. Because during that chaotic week after Kody's breakdown, Robyn kept notes, private, handwritten, emotional notes, that in the eyes of one insider were never intended for production, never intended for public view. But now, those words have emerged, and they show just how far Kody's fixation with control actually extended. The diary starts with simple, shaky script. The 12th of October, it reads. He hasn't ceased pacing. He speaks about Christine as if she betrayed a kingdom. He pronounces the word loyalty, like it is holy, but it no longer feels like love. It feels like a mandate. Crew, on the spot. In one sentence, Robyn hit what the rest of the world was just waking up to. Kody's meltdown wasn't grief. It was a battle cry from a man whose authority was fading away. The next one is even uglier. He keeps talking about how they owe him respect. She wrote. He said love without obedience is chaos. I said that is not love. He said. You wouldn't understand. You are still loyal. Crew, read that again. Love without obedience is chaos. That is not romance, that is dictatorship. And here is where it gets ugly. Another page, smeared with what appears to be tears, reads, "I don't know who I am anymore. I feel like I am not a wife. I am an assistant. I am not part of a marriage. I am holding down a man's anger." Insiders revealed that production spoke to Robyn about the tension on set during the week. A producer asked her, "Is everything between you two okay?" She smiled in front of the cameras and said, "We're just stressed." But the diary speaks differently. "He said Christine would regret it," she wrote. "He said Janelle was poisoning her mind. He said Mary was weak for not fighting harder to stay. I tried to tell him to let it go. He said letting go means losing. He doesn't lose." Crew, those 3 words, "he doesn't lose," reverberate like a threat through every corner of this story. That is the basis of control, that love is a contest, that affection should be garnered by obeying, that victory must take precedence over healing. You see it now, don't you? This wasn't a family, it was a pecking order, and the more that pecking order dissolved, the more desperate he was to rebuild it. One member of the crew from that week observed, "You could feel the energy shift. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was panic, like he needed to prove he still ruled the room." And Robyn, she turned into the final audience to his act. She remained not because she trusted the script, but because she didn't know how to leave the stage without torching the set. Crew, are you listening? That is the price of control. Everybody in your vicinity is included in the show. The tears, the vows, the meltdowns. They're not intimacy, they're strategy, they're performance. And once the cameras turn off, the silence is crushing. So this is the chilling one, the final diary entry we have from that week. "He says I am the only one who understands," she wrote, "but I don't. I just shut up because it is more convenient. Each time I contemplate leaving, he cries once more, and I don't know whether he is crying for me or for himself." Crew, that is the question that encapsulates this entire narrative. Was Kody crying because love was lost, or because love ceased to be his weapon? The truth, hidden amongst those tears, is what reveals all. Because when Robyn stopped believing in the illusion, she stopped being his mirror. And for Kody, that was the ultimate betrayal. Not that she left, but that she saw him. Crew, if you're watching this and you've ever realized someone's love was just control in disguise, hit that like button, because this next part is where the facade crumbles completely. The night the empire crumbled. Crew, it was a Thursday evening. Cameras were not rolling, the house was still. But from 2 insiders and a single audio clip leaked from a phone left running on the counter. That was the night Kody Brown's whole delusion of control finally broke. The evening Christine's attorney served the formal legal notice, affirming her independence and separation from him, was the evening Kody gave up his games of being a husband and began to behave like a dethroned king. The recording is very quiet at the beginning. You can hear a knock, papers being pushed under the door. Then nothing. 30 seconds pass, and then Kody's voice, "She really did it." His break isn't audible, it is cold, flat, then louder. "She really thinks she can do this without me." Crew, picture the moment. The reality hitting, not of loss, but of defiance. To him, Christine's independence was not freedom. It was treason. "They made her think she is better than this family," he growled. "They made her forget what loyalty is." Then the noise of footsteps, pacing, more weighty now. You don't simply walk away from 20 years of faith. You don't get to rewrite the story. And then those words that sent the chills through the insiders who heard them. "She owes me everything." Crew, that is it. That single line, "She owes me everything," is where the mask slipped. That is not the tone of a man mourning lost love. That is the tone of a man losing possession. And what followed next, even the producers didn't anticipate. You can hear Robyn's voice shaking. "Kody, stop. It is done." He retorts, It is not done until I say it is done. A thud, perhaps a chair crashing into the wall. Then quieter. Almost a whisper. They all turned on me. All of them. You'll turn next too, Robyn says. I am not turning on you. I just want peace. He smiles, hard, bitter. Peace. There is no peace without order. When he lost those, his world didn't fall apart. It ended. One of the cast members who listened to the tape commented, you could hear it in his voice, that dawning realization that he wasn't the center anymore. He was orbiting around people who no longer needed him. That is what shattered him. Not loneliness, not betrayal, irrelevance. In the weeks that followed, production recorded something odd. Kody no longer mentioned love at all. His words changed. They became transactional, financial, legal, property, assets, rights, obligations, language that echoes love without the humanity. Crew, are you noticing the pattern? This was not a breakup. It was a failed hostile takeover. And when Christine reclaimed her share, her space, her time, her peace, Kody lost his final hold of leverage. That evening, he sat at the kitchen table for 3 hours looking at the papers. Robyn attempted to remove them from him. He replied, leave them alone. I want to remember what betrayal feels like. But what he was actually seeing wasn't betrayal. It was consequence. The aftermath of years of confusing control with connection. Now here is where things get real. From one source, Kody phoned Mary the following morning, not to apologize, not to look back, but to inquire of one thing. Do you still respect me? Crew, consider that. Not, do you still love me? Not, are you all right? But do you still respect me? Respect was his dependency. Validation was his oxygen. And when the women cut off that supply, he choked. That is why the breakdown resembled heartbreak. Because to a man who constructed his identity upon power, losing control is similar to dying. The confession behind closed doors team. If you've been along for the ride from the beginning, you've watched Kody get angry, you've watched Kody get defiant, and you've watched Kody play the victim. But what you are about to hear, this is coming from a place even he couldn't stage. What went down in that therapy session stripped away every excuse, every public justification, every misunderstood husband routine he has relied on for years. This was Kody, trapped by his own mirror. Sources within production report that following the drama over Christine's court documents, TLC made Kody undergo counseling before production continued. The plan was to regain trusts for the cameras. But what was supposed to be a courtesy turned into an epiphany. The therapist, a woman named Dana, who had worked with the Browns previously, began with an easy one. Kody, how are you feeling at the moment? Silence. Then, Kody laughed. Feeling, he said. That is what everybody demands, feelings, but nobody ever asks what I lost. Dana inquired. What have you lost? He replied. Control. Crew. He really said it, no shame, no hesitation. Control, he said. I had it once, they respected me, they obeyed me, now. They think they can just do whatever they please and call it independence. That is chaos. That is not family. Dana pushed. Do you believe love needs control? He leaned in, voice cutting. Love needs structure. Without a leader, there is confusion. Without obedience, there is no loyalty. Without loyalty, there is no love. Crew, listen to him. Each sentence, a blueprint for manipulation, masquerading as morality. Dana halted and then asked quietly, and what do you do when someone loves you but refuses to obey your rules? Kody gritted his teeth. Then it is not love, it is rebellion. There it was. Again rebellion. That word that has tormented this entire saga. The therapist observed that his heart rate accelerated each time he uttered it. It was not a word to him. It was an injury, Dana questioned. So, when Christine departed, what did that imply for you? He responded. It implied that I failed. It implied my word did not count. It implied I was no longer the center. Crew. There. The reality underlying every tear, every huffy monologue, every so-called breakdown. He did not grieve the loss of love. He grieved the loss of power, he told her. You have to realize. I created this family out of nothing. I made them who they are, and now they treat me like I am replaceable. Dana shot back. You didn't create them, Kody. You lived with them. He snorted. No, I led them. That is the line that cut the deepest. I led them. Not, I loved them. Not, I grew with them. I led them. Crew, that is the instant when Dana realized she wasn't counseling a husband. She was dealing with a man who'd confused leadership with love. And when that leadership was no longer necessary, his sense of self imploded. She attempted to bring him back. Kody, she said. Perhaps love isn't about leading. Perhaps it is about releasing. His reaction, letting go is losing, and I don't lose. He got up and walked out before the hour expired. The therapist's notes, subsequently obtained by producers, said, Kody exhibits signs of power dependency. Identifies love with control. Has difficulty with identity outside of power role. Exhibits fear of irrelevance. Crew, that right there, fear of irrelevance, is the silent truth behind each public meltdown. It is not that the women left him. It is that the spotlight is gone. Because in his universe, being invisible is more painful than being unwanted. One of the producers said. He didn't say a word after that session. He just sat on the porch, staring at the mountains. Perhaps for the first time, Kody was seeing that the authority he battled to maintain was never love to begin with. It was fear disguised, crew. If you are still here watching now, leave a in the comments, because what is about to go down will shake everything we thought we knew. The Revolt in Plain Sight team. If you thought Kody's meltdown was explosive, just wait until you see what Janelle and Christine did next. This wasn't an emotional insurrection. It was a strategic dismantling. For years, these women were informed that they couldn't make it without him. But when Kody's need for control became not just an emotional but a financial one, they knew they had to take back, quietly, systematically, legally. It began modestly. Christine was the first to speak up. Late one evening, she texted Janelle, "We can't keep pretending he'll change." Janelle replied with something that insiders say became their motto. "Then we stop waiting." And from there they did. Janelle started accumulating documents, stale bank statements, deeds to property and computer records she'd copied, just in case. Christine contacted a lawyer who was experienced with plural marriage cases, a lawyer who had experience with spiritual unions. Revenge was not the objective. It was independence, to regain what they'd created, while Kody stashed control in the name of family structure. But when they learned the truth about where their finances had ended up, everything shifted. Remember that Coyote Pass property, the dream project that Kody insisted would bring the family together. The same property he insisted was shared equally, crew. It wasn't. The documents showed that Robyn's name was tied to over 60% of the assets. Christine and Janelle's contributions, the cash, the loans, even the proceeds from Mary's bed and breakfast investment had been redirected through LLCs connected to Kody and Robyn. He called it family management, Janelle said in private notes. But it was a funnel. What he had found was not just betrayal. It was evidence that Kody's love was a business model. And all the emotional tantrums he'd thrown weren't grief over a lost marriage. They were fear of losing control of his kingdom. Christine had confronted him once, When she was preparing to leave, "You built an empire on our backs," she said to him. "And you called it love," his reply. "You agreed to follow me, that was the deal." Crew. That is when Christine finally uttered what fans have been waiting years to hear. "Then I am breaking the deal." Behind the scenes, TLC producers had already heard what was going down. Rather than shut it down, they began taping it all. They knew the breakdown of Kody's power would be ratings gold. But what they didn't anticipate was that Christine and Janelle would be one step ahead of everybody. Even the network. They started negotiating new deals in secret, no longer represented by family representation. They signed individually. That meant, for the first time in more than a decade, Kody didn't hold their paychecks. When producers informed him, he flipped his lid. One source reported he yelled, "You can't film my family without my permission." Of which the executive allegedly responded, "They are your family, Kody, with or without you." The change was seismic. Kody wasn't losing wives so much as he was losing the system that had rendered him relevant. And in a bitter twist of irony, the cameras, the very ones he once employed to wield power, were now documenting his fall from power in real time. Christine, on the other hand, began to flourish. Her social media went haywire, her cookbook pre-orders doubled, and each post she made in which she did not mention Kody became a subtle act of rebellion. Janelle, being practical, set about reclaiming her finances from zero. "It is not revenge," she explained in a confessional. "It is respect. I gave my life to somebody who treated me like a number. Now I am finally counting up for myself." But here is where the tale gets dark. As the women remade their lives, Kody's urgency grew. What he would do, according to a crew member, was call late at night. Not to make up but to negotiate. "If you come back," he said to Janelle one time, "we can rebuild it. We can make it look whole again." Her response was ice cold. "I'm not interested in looking whole. I'm interested in being free." Crew, that's when it clicked for Kody. The control he'd clung to was gone, and the women he'd underestimated were now rewriting the ending of his story without him. But it wasn't over yet. Because just as Christine and Janelle were set to make a complete split of property, Kody made one final, desperate attempt, a money gamble that put it all on the line, including Robyn's safety. The fall of the man who mistook control for love. Crew, where all of it falls apart. Kody's world, the one he had constructed based on rules, hierarchy, and control, comes crashing down, not with a scream, but with silence. When Christine and Janelle had untangled their finances, Kody was in despair. His collapse wasn't emotional any longer. It was logistical. The bills, the property taxes, the accumulating legal fees of years of budget finagling, all coming due. And for the first time in his adult life, there was not a single wife who would just make it all right. Insiders close to production had verified that in a desperate bid, Kody had a meeting with a private investor to sell him his share in Coyote Pass, the property he had referred to as our legacy. But there was a catch. He couldn't. Robyn's name was now placed on most of the deeds, and her own finances were already being leveraged to sustain their home. He'd caught himself in his own trap. The investor supposedly informed him, "You don't own what you think you own." Those words devastated him. Crew observers say Kody sat in his truck for about 2 hours afterward. Still, one producer called it the first time we saw him without words. He later summoned a private meeting with Robyn. The cameras weren't permitted, but transcripts from crew mics recorded snippets of the altercation. Robyn told him, "We can still repair this. We can still rebuild." Kody's voice was raspy. "You don't get it. There is nothing left to rebuild. They took everything." But Robyn didn't blink. "No, Kody," she said. "They didn't take it. You gave it away." That statement sliced through years of denial, because on some deep down level, she was telling the truth. Kody's kingdom didn't fall apart because others dismantled it. It decayed from the inside out. fragment by fragment. Each time he opted for control over connection, power over partnership, obedience over love. Crew, the irony is practically movie. Like the individual who used to say that he was able to handle 4 marriages was unable to handle one fact. Love can't be commanded. He called his therapist that evening, Dana, the same one who'd found him out the first time. He said to her, "I feel like everybody left me," she said. "They didn't leave you, Kody. They left the version of you that couldn't let them breathe," he said. "So what am I now?" Dana took a moment. Perhaps just Kody, and perhaps that is enough. But for Kody, it wasn't. The cameras captured one last confessional as the season concluded. He was older, smaller in some way, the spark extinguished from his eyes. He stated, "Everyone thought I was controlling. Perhaps I was. But I created this family. I gave them everything." Then he glanced off camera and said, "Crew, that line, 'I don't even know who I am without them,' was the most genuine sister-wives moment ever. No editing gimmicks. No producer suggestion. Just a man revealed without his fantasy." The show concluded with him alone walking in the vacant Coyote Pass lot. The land which was to represent wholeness now quiet, weed-covered and chilly. The wind swept dust across the ground, swirled around him, as if jeering at the empire he'd lost. In the distance, the camera captured Christine's laughter weakly resonating from a phone speaker. She was on a video call with her new husband, radiant, unencumbered, alive. The contrast could not have been more stark. Love had moved on, but control remained behind. The final producer notes for the season captured it best. Kody Brown's story is not about plural marriage. It is about power, and what occurs when power is confused with purpose. Crew. That is the tragedy of everything. His collapse was never due to heartbreak. It was due to the languid demise of domination, and when the women no longer needed him, his mirror no longer made sense. And so, as the credits rolled and TLC hinted at a new chapter, one realization became excruciatingly obvious. Kody's era of domination had ended, and what is left now is the silence of a man who realized at last that love, once confined, never returns. If you've been with me since the beginning, leave a in the comments. Not for Kody the husband, but for Kody the man who couldn't recognize that control was just a different type of fear. And with that, crew, we end the chapter, because sometimes the true breakdown isn't what we're shown on television. It is what occurs when the cameras are off, and finally the truth bounces back.